Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast, the OG Alien and Predator podcast. This is regular host Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and joining me are my partners in crime, my fellow killing spree, concrete New Way Devils,
Adam Zeller, aka Rich Top.
Greg, also known as Still Collating.
and we are joined on this episode by a special community guest. We know him as Hunter, but he has his own channel, which he'll tell you about shortly as well once we pass it off over to him. Hunter, thank you for joining us today. It's very much appreciated.
Guys, it is an absolute pleasure to join you today. It's good to be here.
And Hunter's been supporting us for quite a while, if I remember rightly. You mostly used to hit it up with Adam, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been following the podcast for a number of years now. But I think Adam and I kind of hit it off over photography because I work in the film industry and I'm also a photographer on the side. So we hit off during that.
Nice. Well, thank you. And before we get into the actual concrete jungle discussion that we're here to have today, Hunter is brand new on the show, so that of course means that he needs to tell us and the audience all about his first encounter with the Predator. What franchise podcast doesn't fucking do this? It almost seems like a an absolute blur at this point, but I fucking love hearing these stories, and I'm sure everybody else does. So let's continue to be stereotypical, Hunter, and tell us about the first time that you rocked up against the Predator.
With pleasure. So I grew up in a very religious household where I was not allowed to watch certain movies or television. And it was a weird dynamic because my mom taught us and raised us to be Christian, but my dad was Jewish. So my dad wanted me to experience all the films and media that he experienced when he was a teenager. And so I got to watch a lot of things I was not allowed to necessarily watch with my mom around. And I distinctly remember when I was 6 or 7, my dad rented Alien from Blockbuster. And I went to my grandma's house and I watched it on a waterbed. And let me tell you, watching Alien on a waterbed was probably not the first time you should really watch Alien, but I regress it was. And shortly after that, I experienced Predator. Maybe not even a month or two later, and in that short time frame, I got used to seeing like Terminator 2, Alien, Predator, all the greatest sci-fi hits that my dad got to experience. Aliens always has a special place in my heart, but it wasn't until Isolation came out a few years ago where it kind of reignited the flame for my love of Alien. And within the last couple of years, I've just started to be more vocal about it and started to be more outspoken about it. And in 2019, as I said before, I worked in the film industry. So in 2019, I was just starting out, and one of my first films I ever got to work on was with Veronica Cartwright.
Nice.
And I worked on a little indie movie with her, and she was awesome. And I kept my shit together as a fan and didn't ask anything and just did my job as anybody should. And then at the film's premiere, she was there with her assistant, and I just said, "Fuck it, I'm going for it." And I walked up and asked her a few questions, and she remembered me from set, and she gave me all the answers I've heard a million times on any other piece of media. But it was still cool to be sitting there receiving this information from Veronica Cartwright herself. So it was amazing. So yeah, that's the Cliff Notes, the Cliff Note version of this. But yeah, I love this franchise, and I'm happy to be here.
And he's also wearing, for our audio listeners, Hunter is also wearing one of the AVP Galaxy hoodies, jumpers. Look at that.
I sure
That is
am.
Very nice.
it's
Very
proper
nice.
fucking
Very
repping
comfortable. Cotton.
The
Great.
T Public, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if anybody else out there wants one of our branded apparel, is that how you pronounce it? Apparel. Clothing.
Apparel.
Is that how you say it in the UK?
It's just me being
Apparel.
It's me being weird. It's just clothing as far as I'm concerned. I would never ever pronounce it say it like that anyway. But yes, we have a TeePublic, just to throw that in there. Fucking muppet, aren't I? Got to get all those
Gotta get the
plugins.
plugs
There
in.
we go.
Yeah, the
Yes,
plugs.
that's the fucking word I'm looking for. Right, Adam, what the fuck are we here to talk about today?
So, as is usually the case for anniversaries of media we love, we are here to talk about Predator Concrete Jungle. Not hunting grounds, but Concrete Jungle. You know what I mean there, Aaron. I mixed up the names when I did a post on it when I was very tired last night from staying up late and finishing the game so we could do this podcast today. So you're welcome. But yes, we're here to talk about Predator Concrete Jungle, which I don't think I've played through the entirety of since 2005. I mean, I've had it. I'm sure I've skipped through levels and stuff, but from front to back, we've all played it. Revisiting it from those earlier days. I believe this was the first time you two, Hunter and Greg, have ever beaten it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
Yep.
I'd be very curious to hear what you think on your first impression. But for me, revisiting it was really cool. We didn't have a lot of games for Alien and Predator during this console generation. It was really just Extinction, AVP Extinction, and Predator Concrete Jungle. So it's kind of slim pickings in terms of that era. And
Only for the consoles, though. I mean, if you think about it, it really was like a really good age in terms of games anyway, because, this was the decade that we had Classic. This was the decade we had AVP2, Primal Hunt, Thanatos Encounter. I think even, wasn't Aliens Online 2000?
I think those are all very like early 2000s. And I guess AVP was originally 99. So, but I mean like going from the mid to late until 2010, or 2007 with Requiem. We didn't
suppose
have too much. Like Xbox PS2, it was these two games. And those games you had mentioned had been on the PC for a little while at that time. And Predator, as a franchise, has just had way less media than Alien overall. Games especially. A lot of Predator games were on very retro hardware. I know Xbox and PS2 are considered retro at this point. But
Isn't that depressing in itself?
yeah. But I believe there was like Predator 2 on Genesis and stuff like that.
It was
like,
Predator and Predator 2. There was just adaptations of those two films were the only things the game had that was original. I think they got a mobile game around about this sort of era. It would have been late 2000s, mid 2000s.
2010, something like that. Right after
Okay.
Predators.
No, there was one before. It was like an old school fucking Nokia sort of era of phone games, because AVP had 2, 3.
Yeah. We need to do a podcast episode at one point of all the weird, quirky cell phone games. Just like compile emulators of all of these and try and get through them. Well, Sarah says Aaron is thirsty. He's getting confused with an aperitif.
I have no idea. What's an aperitif?
It's a drink, right? It's like a liqueur.
I have no clue.
Okay.
Sarah, you gonna? So as always, as often, we are broadcasting this live to our patrons as well, and Sarah is in the chat to give me shit as we go along on this one, no doubt. But anyway, Adam, sorry.
Anyway, so I was just distracted by that, But yeah, so Concrete Jungle. This was really the first major Predator console release ever, and for that, given the constraints they had, this was kind of a smaller development studio, I believe, from your neck of the woods, Aaron, in Derby, right?
Literally up the road from me, an hour or so away.
Unfortunately, no longer around. But in preparation for this podcast, we did watch a YouTube video by Matt McMuscles, who, as part of his What Happened series, did a video on this almost a year ago. And he talked to some of the devs and was really informative on this. But yeah, should we just start with, I don't know, general thoughts, Aaron?
Well, let's have I guess really you can lead this one off and I'll follow. But, memories of the game when it came out, if you were involved in any of the, I say involved, if you were aware of any of the lead up towards its release, early impressions from back then, how it's changed, if at all, since in the 20 years since, when you were doing this replay in prep for this, if you want to lead us off for that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, this was a year after AVP, which was the most excited I had ever been for a movie at the time. And I was just really getting into the franchise in my kind of mid to late teens because I also, my parents were very choosy about the R-rated movies I could watch. But they started to ease up in my mid teens. And so this franchise that I had always seen through figures and through games and just, the great movie ride and just seeing it around without actually watching the movies, I finally started to really dive into. And Predator 2 especially I thought was a very interesting movie. And so I had just watched all of them on the lead up to AVP, enjoyed AVP, and then a year later we get this game. And at this point, I had played tons of AVP, AVP2 on PC, and AVP Extinction on Xbox. And so I picked up Concrete Jungle on Xbox, and I had seen it had gotten pretty mixed reviews at the time, but going through it, I could just see it was one of those, and licensed tie-in games, I think, still kind of had that reputation at the time. I mean, you had notable exceptions like the EVP on PCs, right? But for console games, I think licensed tie-ins still kind of had a reputation that I would say they've pretty much shook off now these days. But Predator Concrete Jungle, I thought was really solid. Problems at all, and it did have some problems. It had some quirks like AVP Extinction. I don't know if it was quite as frustrating as AVP Extinction, but it still had some moments of frustration. And I'm sure we'll get into those. But overall, I thought this just told a really interesting kind of comic book feeling story. It felt straight out of a Dark Horse comic book with this interesting cast of characters and multi-generational family drama. And it had this weird juxtaposed vibe of like old gangster city with like cyberpunk, and going back and forth between the two, and at one point just totally merging them. And so it just had its own unique flair to it. And even the Predator character was very much this individualized Predator character and developed. And he's our protagonist. We're looking forward to Badlands, where we finally have a Predator as a protagonist. But this game was kind of one of the first things to do that, honestly. And so revisiting it was honestly a treat, even with frustration, even though I embarrassed myself on stream by having to learn the ropes again. I eventually found my footing after falling many times. But it's still very much a game worth playing, and a game I would love to see remastered, re-released. And I don't think this one would be too difficult compared to some of the others in the past. So I hope it becomes accessible to people again, because I think there's still a lot of value here in this game. There are some fun, I would say, cultural elements that may not they might not do the same things these days if they were to make the game these days, or if we were to see a sequel. And those can kind of be fun sometimes. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I think Predator Concrete Jungle is awesome. I would love it to be more accessible for people and to be given a visual upgrade and a boost, on a remaster. So overall, I'm still feeling quite positive about it, quirks and all.
Hunter, how about yourself? Had you played it in the past, or was this literally your first time jumping into it with your streams?
Yeah, so I actually still own my copy of the game from 2005. Uh, I I have to give credit to my mom. She did buy the game for me. She had no idea what the rating was. She had no idea what the letters meant. So I do have to give her credit there. But I remember getting it in 2005, and I remember at that point I was only introduced to the first two films and not to the graphic novels, and so I was basing my experience as a 9-year-old just solely off those movies. So I think when I was a kid, I was a bit disappointed by it and only got as far as the stocking level with El Hongo because I felt a bit frustrated by it. However, now as a 28-year-old man, I have come to appreciate the game. Um, more so over time because grow now experiencing all the other pieces of media with Predator. I actually love that it feels like a Dark Horse comic. I feel like I'm gravitating more towards the campiness of it, and knowing that the game is very self-aware of what it is in terms of the characters and plot and other areas of it. But yes, I think we can all agree, as we'll probably talk about later, the mechanical aspects of the controls are probably what was most infuriating at times, especially during boss battles. But yeah, I like to echo what Adam said. I was thinking as I was playing through it, 20 years later, like we have been discussing Badlands and what that's going to look like and how a protagonist for a Predator is going to appear on screen. And even though this might not be exactly the formula that we expect, it's a good jumping off point to for fans and for a general audience as to how we can expect what a protagonist Predator looks like. But um, I was also captivated by some of the set pieces and the level design that the game introduced, like the Stoneheart church battle. I thought that was very interesting and kind of an interesting choice for a setting. Um, but especially towards the end, I started to think to myself, huh, Scarface might be one of my favorite Predators. And I did not expect to say that by the end of this game. And then I went looking for the NECA, and that's when my heart fell apart. And yeah,
I was thinking of picking one up too to do a action figure photography for the anniversary. But yeah, they are going for a little bit higher prices right now if you're looking on the secondhand market.
NECA stuff always seems to be super expensive if you don't pick it up within the first 6 months or something. I
but
was, I
luckily,
was,
oh, sorry, I'll say, but luckily for the podcast, I was able to find this guy the other day, of course, and had to bring him on. So we do have
Oh,
one here.
nice. Yeah, I do have one of those as well. And for our listeners, that is the beefy Stoneheart Bad Blood Predator, which that was a more recent release. That only came out a couple of years ago, oddly enough, which is, it's like, why didn't you re-release Scarface if you were going to do that? But
Right.
I was fortunate enough to actually get one of the Scarface figures, and he's sat in my display cabinet right behind the Guardian Predator. Bless him. Greg, what's your story, buddy?
Well, I probably have a different approach when it comes to the history of this game. I'm one of the relatively younger fans here, so I didn't play it originally. Generally, I got into gaming, uh, especially with more up to date titles at a later age. Uh, so I relatively became aware of Predator Concrete Jungle quite early in my Alien and Predator uh, overall journey. After I've seen the films and then discovering the gameplay videos on YouTube and getting into all of the lore, it all kind of came in one package for me. But technically, I've never actually played the game until now for this review. So that was quite a strange experience, seeing something that I've known not only known about the game, but of course extensively. I watch the walkthroughs and playthroughs multiple times a year because it really is an experience and a story that I always really adored. I've always been a relatively big fan of Predator 2, and I always think that it's a bit underrated and gets a bit too much harsh love there. So seeing that the game Predator Concrete Jungle is very inspired by Predator 2 more so than Predator 1, and also very heavily kind of thematically ties into all of my other favorite elements: AVP Extinction, AVP 2, and as previously mentioned, of course, the Dark Horse comics. It all to me kind of feels like the same package. And as a child, I probably had even believed that they were all made by the same entity because they just all mesh so well together. It was something about that era, it seems. But I was always enamored by the story, by how it's fairly over the top, and especially replaying it now, uh, I was kind of surprised there when I compare it to some of my nostalgia goggles, that it's more over the top than how I remembered, but at the same time, I adore that they play it straight. They play it very seriously in there, and kind of helps establish the campy vibe. But at the same time, it was more silly than maybe something like AVP2 and some of the dark horse comics. But still, for the overall atmosphere, I just adored what they did there. And then when I got to actually first playing it, then I finally understood the negatives that people had been saying about the game, about the controls. Because before, until you get to experience and just watching through the videos, you are like, this can't be that bad. Why would people complain? It doesn't look so hard. It should be easier and normal to control. But playing a game from the early 2000s nowadays just brought to me a bunch of nostalgia when I was a kid and playing other early 2000s games with terrible, frustrating camera controls. It was very kind of strange in the sense of feeling great nostalgia for it, but also great frustration and realizing how good we have with modern controls regarding today's games. That uh, video games in this modern era, at least, the controls are so much more smoother. So that was always something hilarious. And finally getting to play it, I also understood the difficulty, how uh, how games really didn't hold your hand back then. But even compared to other of the Alien and Predator games of that time, it stands out as one of the most difficult. So it was quite a memorable experience playing this after so many years of it being in my psyche. But I'm thrilled that I've had the experience to do so, and an excuse to finally try it. And overall, I'm very happy with it, even though it had a myriad of little issues here and there that we'll talk about.
Yeah, the graphical flair, I think, for those early to mid 2000s games, just at least for me, never gets old, never goes out of style. Like when we thought graphics were really starting to get good, like there's always that kind of look. I was watching a video the other day with my girlfriend about the Star Trek Elite Force games, Aaron, and just seeing the footage of that, I was like, wow, those games really looked killer for their day. And I think the same is said for this game. Like visually, it holds up pretty well, I would say.
I have to wonder how much of that is us playing it on upscaled emulators,
Yeah,
though,
if I
compared
if I threw it
to
on my Xbox, maybe I wouldn't think that. But
yes. So on that vein, so for me, I don't have nostalgia goggles for this game. It came out at a time I was, particularly active anyway. This was when I was coming up in the Alien community and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't really have much memory of it. Um, and I kind of trying to be. Today I'd been trying to go back through some of the way back stuff, looking through my old AVP World files on my computer, looking through the old archives, my old news archives and stuff like that. And there's articles of us referring to the Predator game as if we knew something was coming up. And as of recording this, I've only just remembered that we learned about this from a set interview or a set tour thing from AVP, where they spoke about people from a company coming in to scan weapons for an upcoming game. And then it was eventually announced in April, May time of 2004, that this game was coming out. And it was, I don't really remember much of it after that. I genuinely don't. I don't remember a lot of the lead up. I don't remember much excitement towards it. And maybe that was just because I sort of petered off a bit towards the end of 2020. Oh my God, I keep doing it. Towards the end of 2004. Because like Darkness, I was a bit disappointed in in the film and the comics and the books and stuff at that point. And the final nail in the straw for me was when I was offered a copy of the game. I asked for it on Xbox because that's what I had. When this came out, I was 15, 16. I had a paper round. My only income was £44 a month. And most of that was spent on Stargate DVDs. So, I couldn't afford the 50, 60 quid video games that were coming out. So when I was offered a copy, I asked for Xbox. They sent PlayStation 2. I couldn't play it. And I didn't get to touch it properly until a good few years later. I brought myself a used Xbox copy a good few years later, and I gave it a honest, good go. And I got to the alien missions, and I could never get past the alien mission, the first alien mission. So what would I must have been 18, 19, something like that, trying to play it on my old OG Xbox, and that mission just infuriated me. It infuriated me from the point of the view of Predator gets so few fucking things. Can it have something without the aliens having to show up and steal the spotlight, please? But also, I just physically couldn't get through the mission. I just kept getting absolutely ransacked by these aliens, and I just couldn't make it through. So I never finished it. And then a couple of years ago, I cracked out a PlayStation 2. I eventually brought a PlayStation 2 copy from, you can see the CEX sticker on my copy here on the camera. CX is a used thing over here for us. I guess it's like our GameSpot. Is that
Stop.
Yeah. And I gave it a little go on the original PlayStation 2 hardware downstairs on the telly with some sort of upscaling thing I had, and it didn't look great. I'm not gonna lie, it didn't look fantastic. And I think I got to the mafia level where you have to go and escort, in quotation marks, that police mech. And I don't think I ever revisited it until I started prepping for this podcast a good few weeks ago. So as of this recording, I've only just finished Concrete Jungle. Well, last week, whatever. But as of for this podcast, I've only just finished it. So I don't have the same nostalgia goggles that I do for AVP or AVP2 or Extinction or anything like that. But I went into it with my memories of it mostly being the frustration around that alien mission and just the general awareness of how heavily criticized the control schemes were, how heavily criticized the camera stuff was, and stuff like that. And I don't know whether it was because I went in armed by that knowledge already, but I was like ready to fight against the camera. I was ready to know that I was going to maybe struggle a bit with some of the navigation. And I got on pretty well with it. I'm not going to lie, there was some moments where it's like, for fuck's sake, I just want to jump up there. Or when you're in a boss battle and you're locked onto the, especially in the 10,000 Ways to Die one, where you're locked onto an enemy, you're jumping about, doing all your barrel rolls and your cartwheels. Well, was it the RPG where we were doing barrel rolls? One of them, I was doing Calum's thing, and then I'd end up jumping off the side of the fucking map as I'm trying to dodge out the way. So there were silly things like that, but because I was kind of expecting some difficulties, I got on well with it. At navigation, yep, I was jumping around, I was fine. I got to the flow of it, and it didn't piss me off. It genuinely didn't piss me off. They were there, You can't ignore the fact that it is janky sometimes. The first person view is when it was at its most difficult, in my opinion. And the game is certainly hard, like Greg said, but it wasn't really until that 10,000 Ways to Die mission, which is what, the last 6 missions, something like that.
It's like mission 20, I believe. It's 7 missions before the end of the game.
Yeah. And to be fair, Hunter's saying 27 missions there. A lot of those, about half of those missions are boss battles, just little coders that are separate to the main missions. But yeah, it wasn't until, the very end of the game that I actually started to find it genuinely difficult. That's not to say some of the earlier stuff wasn't. The earlier boss battles, some of them I struggled with, when you were trying to work out the right way to combat them or the right sequence to combat them. But that mission is when I started using save states on the emulator. I hadn't been doing that previously until that one. So yeah, it's a difficult game, but in that it's also very satisfying. When I got through that alien mission, I was so fucking pleased with myself. I was like, I've defeated this scourge, this relic of my teenhood that kept me from embracing this game. It is done. It is over with. I'm happy. It's very much a comic book game. It feels Dark Horse. And I think, Hunter, you mentioned earlier Camp. This feels like Predator 2. This is a Predator 2 on steroids with a good dose of Dark Horse influence. So, it's not quite, I wouldn't say it feels serious or cinematic in that sense. But if you've read AVP Eternal, if you've read Strange Brew, or those OG Mark Verheiden ones, you appreciate this. You appreciate the tone and the vibe and everything that's going on in here. Scarface is a fantastic character. All the use of the mimicry, even just some of the body language. I forget which bit it is, but there's a cutscene where a question comes up or something, and it's directed at Scarface, and he just flicks his wrist blades in response and does this little pose, and I'm like, yeah, that is a good Predator right there. He's a sassy boy, and I very much enjoy all the shade that he's been throwing around throughout this. But I'll stop stealing the spotlight there, and we'll start to talk specifics. But yeah, I enjoyed it. That's it at the end of the day. It has a bad reputation critically, but fans love this game, which seems to be the general response. And we'll read out some of the comments of some of our community later on. But yeah, I think we've all said, haven't we? It's got its problems, but it's still a fucking fun game.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for a number of things that might have mixed and negative reception when they come out. Is sometimes they can go on to achieve kind of cult status, and people will go back and revisit them, and their opinions might change, or they might love it even more. So yeah, I do feel like Predator Concrete Jungle has a pretty good reputation among fans. I mean, I've seen fan art and fan photography based on the game, so I'm glad we can be celebrating it a little bit for its 20th anniversary. This isn't the only podcast we have planned for the game, so I'm excited to actually talk to some of the people that put it together and developed it.
Indeed. So that'll be coming out after this. There's a good few of the developers who have agreed to come and do one of the retrospective roundtables that we have started doing these last few years, which have been pretty fucking fun, really, haven't they, Adam? So that will be nice. Where should we start off? Should we dig into the story a little bit on this one to start us off?
Sure.
Yep. Who wants to lead here? Who's got more to say about the story? No volunteers?
Who's gonna do it?
I'll give it a shot, guys.
Go on, Hunter.
I'm the newbie, so I'll give it a shot here. So please correct me if I'm wrong here, but basically the story follows an exiled predator who did not complete his mission in a sense and left his technology at the hands of a crime syndicate that basically turned those weapons into Prometheus tech, not related to the movies. And the predator gets a second chance from his clan to revisit Earth many, many years later, 100 years later, if I'm not mistaken, to reclaim his honor and take out the individuals and sub individuals that are using said tech from the predators to restore the honor.
If we think about it, he's actually the OG wolf. He's going and cleaning up his mess. Although I guess it wasn't really Wolf's mess, but he's there to clean up unfortunate incidents.
Can
But
we talk about the starting premise of the game? As somebody who adores generally the whole idea of uh, the people getting their hands on predator technology and then seeing that develop into what a city would use, how the gangs, how different companies would uh, try to use that to their advantage. That's all genius, and I really love what Concrete Jungle did there, and it's kind of interesting that uh, neither really too deeply did any other comic book or novel try even to go that kind of route and explore such a potentially interesting story there. But uh, that all is fine and good, fine and dandy. But just the starting premise, it starts out very cinematically. I adore the narration of spoilers mother there, but I do find it kind of a tad bit hilarious that all of the transpired effects and the story we get is because seemingly Scarface, instead of blowing up his own wrist computer and himself like most predators do, did he forget to bring the bomb on his person and just left it in the ship, or was that the plan all along?
Or maybe
That was the most hilarious
maybe,
part for me.
maybe that was the earlier version of the technology and it wasn't portable at that point. And the idea is they have to get close enough to the ships to get caught in the blast wave.
But AVP was
Oh,
before.
Shh,
Oh.
shh, 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 shh.
that,
No.
I mean, it's kind of a cop out, but it is interesting because yeah, that was in the 1930s, theoretically there, but our first Predator uh, film is set a lot later, so it
I
may
don't. I
be.
don't think it's a valid excuse. Like Adam says,
That
Concrete
wasn't.
Jungle plays very heavily on the influences of Anderson's EVP. In aesthetic, in narrative, Wayland San. Whoever that ends up being at the very end of the game, and Peter gets a call out as well as being a close friend of this crime syndicate industry.
Yeah,
Going on.
Hunter knew him before he disappeared. But yeah, so the story is like we start off just kind of being thrown into it in the middle of this chaos in the old city, very kind of Chicago feeling of New Way City, right? Before it is eventually
Mhm.
reborn as Neonopolis in the future. But the city is destroyed with the ship. As you said, Hunter, the Predator sent into exile, then eventually retrieved by his clan, comes back to Earth to try and take down this crime syndicate that has stolen the Predator tech. And we have this interfamily drama squabble going on in this future setting, which is interesting. But also heavily at play here is the subject of predator vampirism, which is something I think we first saw in AVP Eternal, if I'm not mistaken, Aaron.
Eternal and Strange Rue, I think, are the more notable encounters of it.
Right. So at this point, Hunter Borgia is like 100 years old, and he's become the leader of this family crime syndicate. And his daughter, Lucretia, uh, she kind of runs the company where he's really focused on augmenting himself and trying to get the predators back, assuming so that he can take more of their blood and live even longer. And then you have this mother character who we find out is tied into the mother computer from Alien, oddly enough. And she was Hunter Borgia's mother, so Lucretia's grandmother. And we find her later in the game suspended in this tank, and she's become like, what do they call it? A biological hard drive later in the game.
Yes, that's a brilliant phrase for this corny ass concept here.
But there's so many characters at play between like we have El Hongo running around and he's trying to enjoy himself while the predator's on his tail. So And it's just, you have all these, it's kind of like Predator 2. You'll just have these wacky characters show up out of nowhere for a little bit before getting off. You have this the stripper elite squad or something with these camo suits, and so there's a lot of random wackiness, and suddenly we're in like a luchador arena being cheered on. Like, so there's a lot of moments that we're probably not going to go into from the game that are just really cool and really memorable. But the overall story of this Predator redemption, of this family drama, and there's at times you can tell the Predator is like, as you like to see in a Predator, Aaron, he's sadistic and enjoying himself. Like this is used a lot with the vocal mimicry, you know, after he kills mother. What was her name? Isabella?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. He goes like, I'll give you a night to remember, just like he said before, like he killed her husband way back in the day. So there's a lot of those moments where it's like, damn, this Predator is kind of sadistic here, but especially at the end before he takes out. So the game kind of concludes where the Predator has been tracking Lucretia, who's in charge of this company, working his way to the top through like these, you know, criminal underlings. And eventually the Predator, there's like all these different elite groups you go against too. There's like these samurai, there are these monster men that are like augmented cyborg freaks and stuff. Eventually you follow her through the city and you get to Borgia Industries like laboratory. And there's been a lot of predators that have been captured and that are being experimented on. And it was a cool moment of the game where you have to free some of them and they fight alongside you. And I couldn't get them to survive, unfortunately, to the end of the mission. I don't know if you guys had better luck than me on that one. But some predators were experimented on more than others and completely brainwashed, and they become some of the primary antagonists in the game. There's Stoneheart, Swift Knife,
Long spear.
and Long Spear. That's right. So they
Which
are,
are all names the game gives you, if I remember rightly, in the menu and stuff and the objectives.
and in the trophy room, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have to fight these bad blood predators. One gets away, the biggest one, Stoneheart, and you have this epic battle with him later in this weird kind of holodeck recreation of the old city in Borgia Industries, close to
Which
where.
was
Sorry, go ahead.
which was cool because the game, you know, like was Greg was saying, you know, the game starts you off in the 1930s. You know, it's this big cinematic moment of the events after he fought. I always forget his name. Adam, come on, Bruno. After Scarface fought Bruno, after Hunter was born, after he got shot in the face, you know, and it's this big chase sequence towards the end of the thing, and it's a great start to the game. You know, it completely sells a different tone to what it ends up being. You know, that is a very much more cinematic, serious tone to it than the Predator 2 comic-y vibe that you get later on. But the game does this thing where we are continually, no, that's the wrong word. We frequently go back and forth between 1930s and 2030s, you know, to events that lead up to the start of the game. So, you know, it's this nice contrast of the old day and the new day. And when it gets to like that Stoneheart battle in the church and you get to fight the some of the more elite soldiers before that, you know, it's the past and the future colliding in this holodeck recreation of locations that we've fought previously, like you were saying, Adam. So it's this nice point where the game's two tones and two aesthetics and the literal past and the present sort of collide. Probably a bit more depth than maybe the game's intending for there, but it was a moment I really enjoyed. You know, when you switch to the PredTech vision and then the Cascade just falls away, and you know all you're seeing is this blank, textureless bits of it because you are just seeing the technology that's creating the holodeck in it. Yeah, I really liked those two missions. I thought it was a nice amalgamation, a nice conclusion of those vibes coming together.
And then right after that, we run into our, you know, biological computer mother, and she sicks the Xenomorphs on us, which I didn't feel was that difficult a mission compared to the ones we had just gotten through. I thought it was kind of a nice reprieve. Honestly, it's like, yeah, they were kind of annoying. They slowly kind of chase you around the whole level, and it's a little tricky to find the fans that you have to like destroy to get the computer to start to melt down or whatever. But I didn't mind that mission. If anything, the aliens felt a little too easy to dispatch compared to like
Okay.
the luchadors we fought earlier in the game. I could see
Oh,
some
oh,
alien fans getting pissed here, but
okay, but before Adam goes on here, Hunter, Greg,
I agree.
weigh in here. Thoughts on the alien missions, and then them as enemies in the game.
You go first, Hunter.
Oh man, I'll take a shot at it. I, well, for difficulty, I wouldn't say it was difficult. I would say it's just annoying. Yeah, as some of us have stated, it was a bit aggravating when you weren't consistent about stunning the aliens, and then you just get a whole pack of them on your tail, and you just felt frustrated by the fact that something was consistently following you. But I didn't find them individually difficult, just cumbersome at times. Um, I knew about the aliens going into it because of a few spoilers that I'd seen over the years, so I knew it was coming. I don't hate it as much as I thought I would. I think that it's a nice change of pace, and it gives the player a chance to really feel like any attack will do damage and interrupt their playing style, because I feel like you play, if you count the sub levels, 20 something levels up to this point, and then your playing style has to change based off the aliens. You can't go first person, or I mean you can, but it's not a smart move. And you have to start utilizing other pieces of arsenal like the fire bombs, the sonic bombs, and such at your disposal. But I'm not a huge fan of the aliens being part of the game, but I think it was a nice change of pace to kind of get the player in a different area. But that's the long-winded answer.
Well, uh, from my perspective, though, first let's go in terms of the difficulty. They are basically, we can call them, they're ankle biters. They are they are a bunch of lethargic, slow-moving chihuahuas just munching at munching at you that quickly. Uh, get your health down. There, I was honestly playing it now. I was kind of surprised gameplay-wise that they were slower than I would expect an alien to be. But I am on Adam's side in saying that if we look at health-wise, they do seem a bit too on the same level as regular humans are, in the sense of how long it takes to take out some of them. If you scan them, for some of them you will get little comments in the scan like they are augmented or on these super drugs or have some kind of hidden force field armor things, but not all of them have that, and it does take surprising long amount of time to get down some of these later gang members or security guards. If, I would imagine a predator with their crazy special metal and sharpness that was demonstrated in all of the films, Predator and AVP, till that point, that it would it would make mincemeat out of any type of protection there. So at times I was a little bit irked that other characters were a bit more buffed than I would like on average balance. But the aliens I thought were relatively okay. Yeah, there were too many of them in that sense, and that's why they made them slower. They I believe it could have been done easier if they just put a little less number wise and made them realistically fast there. But I also did like, as a great Alien fan, seeing that Scarface, who had that method of dispatching humans when we have a bunch of aliens, Scarface, from our perspective as a player, we go, "Oh, oh God, no! Oh shit, what do we do now?" So I do like that the alien was a threat to him in that sense. Yeah, it was more annoying than it was really fear-inducing. But at least it was something different in that sense that you were like, I have to get away from them. If they bunch up on me, I am dead. So I do like that aspect. It's not, it could have gone the other way if another creative team decided to go completely abstract balls to the wall with the effects and go like, God, the predator kills dozen aliens with one swing and stuff. No, you're running away from them. You're using big attacks, mines, and everything, just trying to slow them down. So I like that. But in terms of like lore wise, the appearance of them in the game, I think I am the intended type of audience there for which this was written, because I remember I, as a teen, when I first saw that, I was screaming like, "Oh, this is the coolest thing ever!" So I adored that. I thought that was quite an awesome way to uh, portray some of the relatively the final levels in the game. I thought it was kind of a genius crescendo there of the whole dynamic, raising the stakes there. At the time, to me, Alien and Predator, to me that was all just one thing, as in the AVP wider universe. So it was completely normal for me to, okay, yeah, they could come into view of each other's games. I always love when both of them have their own kind of solo entries, and always, of course, believe they could work solo. But it's always like a surprise guest star when you see them. Oh, look, we have this special event, this special guest. Let's see what happens with the dynamic there. So I thought it was. I, I adored that. I thought it was a nice bonus there. So I completely understand Aaron's reasoning there, but emotionally, I must say I never emotionally agreed with that stance. I was always completely on board with that as a nice kind of bonus thing. To me, it doesn't detract from this being a Predator story, because yeah, to me, Scarface is almost certainly my favorite Predator of all time. As the characterization, it, he's a mean bastard that's out there to regain his honor, to clean up his mistakes and have a good time doing it. And as previously mentioned, the mimicry, I think it's the best use of mimicry in any game film to date, in the sense it was used often, but it was used very intelligently, creatively. You can see how the dialogue was written specifically in the game to be able to be used later, and then the ways when it is used, just perfect timing. It literally it's kind of a literal making of your own game quotable in that very same game. So the Predator, Scarface is quoting the game constantly back at the people, and it just felt so badass. So in that sense, it's very kind of, it is that comic-y, over the top rock pedal to the metal style that worked very, very, very well. So I liked all of the kind of choices there that were made, in the sense of how the stakes were being upped.
So, sorry, Adam, before you go. So, Greg, there, to your point of it not taken away from the Predator, I completely get where you're coming from in this mentality of, Alien and Predator belong together. We all came up in that era as well of the movie, of the games. Everything was tied together there. So I completely see where you're coming from, especially, the later parts of the game very much are, this is an Alien prequel as much as it is a Predator sequel. This is very much in the vein of the film. But I always can't help but be like, yeah, I understand that, but there's still so much more on the Predator side of things that you could have done. What I would have rather have seen? I would have rather it been somehow those scorpion fucking aliens from the cutscene, or we got a mission or two of Scarface's exile. On an alien planet dealing with the scorpion things, because then we're getting this taste of aliens in lowercase a, but it's also still very much retaining a Predator identity. He is the title character, and it's the same sort of how I'd love to see more other extraterrestrials show up on the Predator side of things. I very much like in the Marvel comics. We get to see the River Ghosts again. We get to see some of the random fucking aliens in those runs and stuff like that. But it's still very much in the Predator world. I mean, obviously, 20 years down the line, it's easy for me to go, I wish they'd have done this instead of that, or blah 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 blah. But that was why. Even though it was at a time period where Alien and Predator were, yes, this is the thing. Now it's very much separated. AVP is this dirty concept because the
For
reaction to
now.
the movies. For now, yes, but it's we don't get AVP things anymore, unfortunately.
For now.
For now, you keep coping, Adam. You keep coping.
I'm just saying what's gonna happen, man. But
Every year, Adam's like, this
next
is the
year's
year.
the year.
This is the year.
AVP is coming back next year. Mark my words. But
not saying we don't know bits as well about the things. But we won't talk about that.
I gave enough of a teaser, and you don't have to give any more.
No, I'm not saying anymore. I'm just making noises into the microphone.
But I'm kind of with Greg in that when I first played that, I had no idea it was coming, and I was ecstatic. I didn't feel that the aliens stole the show personally, but it was just really cool to see because AVP was the thing at the time, came out a year before this game. And the influence, even in just the Predator's appearance, having this more bulky look and the sounds he made with the tiger roars and stuff like that.
And the mask.
The mask, yeah, pretty much adapted from Celtic's mask. I felt.
And the weaponry.
Yeah, the weaponry, the shurikens there. I like
some of the shoulder cannon upgrades.
Speaking of the shoulder cannon, one of the upgrades has an alien skull on the shoulder cannon, which was cool to see. I don't think I found that upgrade. Otherwise, it probably would have tipped me off that the aliens were coming in the game. Like when I first played it. This time around, I did. But yeah, to me, it was 2 missions that you're not really focused on the xenomorphs. They're just there to try and impede you. And yeah, I didn't think they were too difficult because that level just throws literally infinite pulse mines at you. And if you hit a group
only at one spot.
Yeah, but you're going back through that area. It's
but
like
there's like 2 or 3 that you have to go do that are well away from that spawn point. So you have to like really carefully use them once you're out there, because if you try and slice them, if you try and attack them with your shoulder cannon, it's just you're wasting your energy, you're getting splash damage, you're getting overwhelmed. I found the best weapon to actually be the shuriken.
Really?
Yeah.
I just used the spear for it, where you do the combo where he just swings around the sphere, and that would usually knock them all down after the pulse mines. And it gave you a lot of health in that level as well, in terms of like health pickups. And it was interesting because you do more of the gecko crawl in those 2 missions than any of the rest. And that's when the aliens will kind of really annoy you, is they'll start to catch up to you and swipe at you, and there's really nothing you can do other than
that's
backflip.
Where you need the mines. No, that's where you had to save the mines for, because when you were crawling on the environment, you could just throw one of the pulse mines down. When they hit it as you're crawling away, they'll fall off and go, have a nap at the bottom of the...
You got to do it early enough, though, because when I tried that, the splash damage got me, and it sent me all the way to the bottom.
It's with every mine other than the fire mine.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
I cut the aliens a bit of slack, because I will say that when I first saw the aliens in this mission, there was, I think for every one of us, there's a little bit of party that's like, oh my gosh, the aliens are here, and you have to acknowledge that. But I cut them some slack because I know that the aliens kind of came later in the game's development, and that they were still working on the geometry of how the aliens would interact in the environment, and they built it that way. But I will say I have to go off Adam's point. I just kept using my spear and throwing a pulse mine, and then decking it, just running as fast as I can, and then throwing one down every so often, because I knew they were they were tailing me. So I would use the fire bombs when it was close proximity, and then the sonic when I was climbing that one long shaft that was connected to the bottom level and the top level with the fan at the very top. That's the only time I'd use the sonic, is when I had to do very long climbs with the gecko.
And it's funny that Mother never really explains them, other than, oh, they were just a gift from Hunter, and I didn't know where he found them.
I don't know where I found them.
I
At
did
the
like
bottom
how
of a lake in Bouvetoya Island.
Oh, maybe. I did like how the hive looked because they were all in these huge computer tunnels, and the lighting changed from one mission to the next. And the second one, it was all red, so it was pretty nightmarish seeing like the alien hive with this red technology behind it. So I thought it was one of the more intriguing looking hives because they're all in just these huge cylindrical uh, access ports, I guess, which I guess they're just living there. So they haven't gotten out yet. Um, but yeah, no,
In
that
the middle of Neonopolis.
right. So if there is a sequel, we'll have to see what happened to all those aliens just roaming around in there.
But you and Hunter bring up the gecko climb, so to speak, and I think that is one of the strengths of the game. In AVP 2, we're first person as the predator. It's fucking awesome. We get to run around cloak. We get all the cool weaponry and everything like that. But for all the flaws of third person in that era for controls, the cameras is not an exclusive problem to this game. To Concrete Jungle, third person games back then, from the 90s to the 2000s, were just ripe with issues. But I feel like it was fucking worth it to actually get to see the Predator in action, get to see all these fucking graceful ballet kind of moves as he's swiping, and some of the flourishes of the weaponry and stuff like that, especially when you get to the glaive. No, not the glaive. The fucking handheld spinny
Maul.
blade. Maul. Thank you. Yes. Some of the flourishes of the animation. The guys at Eurocom were having fucking fun when they were animating Scarface, and the amount of times, like when you jump on the robot cop things, the mech suits, and you start to rip it open. The amount of times I'd uncloak, I'd make sure I'm off my vision, I'm just swinging it around, just enjoying the visuals of the Predator ripping this fucking synth-ish human's head out of the thing. I loved it. I loved the way Scarface looked in here, even as a character design. Adams mentioned it's very AVP inspired, but in the good way. When you can tell it's Ian White in the suit and not the dentists who are standing in as stunt predators. When it's Ian White being lean and athletic, but he still just has this bulky armor. Scarface looks fantastic. Even with it just being a reuse of Celtic's mask as well, there's flourishes to it. Things like the skull on the spikes on the armor, the war paint on the face, the war paint on the armor, the chainmail that Scarface wears. It gives it this very medieval kind of look to it, which doesn't quite work with the 1930s thing, but it adds history. It adds, a bit of length and background to Scarface as a character that goes along with the period piece. So, it makes him feel old. It makes him feel experienced, even if he does fuck up. So, character design, character animation, game animation, it was just wonderful seeing that.
And there were other Predator costumes you could unlock as well. There were some original ones like the Dark Blade Clan, the Ritual armor, and you had some from the movies. They had the Scar armor, which was called Alien Hunter in this game, as well as the City Hunter armor,
And
and
Jungle?
and Jungle as well. So that was really cool. I think this is one of the first times we could really customize our Predator a little bit, something that would become a big staple in Predator hunting grounds. And like you said, Aaron, the whole Predcore thing with that is this game, which showed in third person a Predator moving like that. Like hunting grounds kind of expanded on that with Predcore. But I think you could take it even further and have like an Assassin's Creed style parkour system, or like Mirror's Edge, even if it was a first person Predator game again. So yeah, this game, it was really cool to see the Predators move like that in third person for the first time.
Couldn't agree more about the animations. I think gameplay wise, the animations are my favorite aspect, very closely followed by all the weapons that are available. Stunning. But I think out of all of the animations, my favorite must be just a silly thing when you're climbing up the stairs, the way the predator just swings left to right, and it's so fluid and feels so natural. It's beautiful. And then when you see uh, our titular predator Scarface on just on the main menu, it posed like that. It's very dynamic. It's very athletic, and of course, again, what we said a million times, it's very comic booky with those extreme poses. It's you feel the physicality of that character. I also adore how even though the creature you can feel how big it is compared to other people. You can also feel its speed and its weight when that thing jumps down, and it has that little
Lands.
kind of, yeah, that pause in animation to get that weight up again. it, it's perfect. That part made me forgive all of the clunkiness of the controls, but seeing how well that part is explored, I do kind of feel like I wish we had such a game for modern times. Predator Hunting Grounds uh, does a few elements similarly well, but at the same time, it doesn't have all of the fluidity and finesse, especially in the animations, maybe that something like Concrete Jungle has. That I wish, as Adam said, with today's technology, you can easily make something like an Assassin's Creed, a third-person parkour Predator game. You can do that no problem. You can do that very well with first-person games now as well, relatively easily. So whatever way somebody would want to, if we ever get a future kind of solo Predator game, which we never know how likely that is, but I hope that theoretically, if anybody would ever do that, that they focus on the Predator parkour aspect of it, how important that is, because I think gameplay wise, that carried so much weight in Concrete Jungle, that and the level design.
I think the execution animations too were just such a, distinct feature of this Predator too. I mean, we're talking about how Scarface is kind of enjoying himself down here, trying to reclaim his honor. And I mean, from the beginning when he would kill just a simple-minded human with the wrist blades from a slash to done, and the person's cut in three, to even some of the simpler but faster executions of just claiming the trophy and getting out of there. I mean, it just really shows the physicality of him as a character and how he likes to enjoy his kills.
I was going to
This
bring that up too. The the game is wonderfully gory at times, and the executions are a lot of fun. There's like one where the predator just picks someone up and twists them around like a doll and breaks all their bones. And so that part of the game, and I mean, we'd see that kind of into AVP 2010, just those like ridiculous, over the top, gory kills. But this game had some wonderful violence, I would say.
the one that I always really liked, and it's so simple, but it sort of really expresses the simple and pure strength of the Predator as a character. Is the unarmed trophy kill where you've got your wrist blades away, you walk up behind a character, he picks him up by the head, and he just squeezes the skull and just pops the skull. And I'm like, yes, that is not as flourishing as some of the other kills. I love the ones where you can bend them over a fucking railing. You can but that I mean, I think that was with when you grappled with them as well. But there is all sorts of stylized kills in this. But that one was just a simple way of reminding, yes, the predator is this big, physical, strong creature. And it was so simple. And there's another bit of level design that's really simple. The predator doesn't fit through a lot of doors. The level design shows you these human-sized doors that you just can't fit through because she's just so big. And again, speaking to the third person and speaking to the impressiveness of the predator as a character, as a presence, it was just such a simple way of doing it, and it was so effective. And I had a smile on my face in some of those moments.
Another thing I wanted to bring up, which I'm sure you have some thoughts about, Greg, is the music for this game. And I thought it was very well done. Aaron, do you have the composer nearby?
I will find it. Talk amongst
Okay.
yourselves.
So the music was again, just very eclectic. It went through everything from like Latin flair to just metal to like operatic orchestral to like almost hip hop sounding at times. There was just all different genres in the mix here, but also your very bombastic kind of action score you would associate with a Predator story. So I really thought the music was great. What did you guys think?
The music is definitely a standout part there. Um, as said, just looking at the musical themes connected to the Predator, it works extremely well to bring those musical cues you kind of learned to expect throughout the Predator films, yet has also a lot of original elements in it as well. It really lends itself to not only having those tribal hunting elements that you expect with a Predator, but with the fullness of the whole orchestra there, it really emphasizes also the cinematic aspect of the story. It emphasizes how this Predator isn't only out for the hunt; he's out for revenge as well, to take down everybody else there. It's very kind of also spy thrillery, adventure esque in music style. But yeah, having the drastic changes in genre when it's dealing with the different gangs, I thought that was a lovely little touch. The one that I noticed most of all was when Scarface goes to face the dead men, or whatever the gang is called. They're in that cemetery having a full metal concert there, and the Predator just crashes it, and it's like this is perfect. This is crazy storytelling with awesome musical atmospheric, uh, just something that you wouldn't expect to be put in such a scenario, and it works. It works like uh, like the best kind of campy comic book that's being played seriously, but come to life through audio-visual mediums. So I adored every time I heard some of those changes in genre and those emphasis of musical cues. It worked perfectly. So I think that's one of the other very strong aspects that gives lending to that feeling of an epic story being told in this game.
So Sarah says in the comments, I thought I was tripping during the playthrough that Adam was streaming. I swear one stage uses the chorus from a Black Sheep song that was sort of used by Fatboy Slim in Weapon of Choice. I mean, I don't know Fatboy Slim or Black Sheep that well, so I can't really talk to that bit. But no, it was incredibly fun in that campy way that the game, and kind of inappropriate way that the game leads into some stereotypes that you would only get away with in the 2000s. You know, some of the costume design, some of the voice acting, and stuff like that. But in a musical way, it's kind of charming and it works well. And it was Ian Livingston that was the composer for this, who had done a lot of video games throughout his career. Prior to this, he'd done what I would have played, Star Trek Invasion. And that was a ship game in the early 2000s. And he'd also, just before Predator, done Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, if anybody remembers that one.
I remember that game.
Was, yeah, that was cool, around the post-Halo, I think, era. Just about post-Halo. Yeah, he's done loads of stuff. He did Batman Begins, who I think was Eurocom as well. The same developers. Bunch of random video games, Company of Heroes, Lord of the Rings Conquest, one of the Battlefields, 1943. That's mostly his career is doing video game stuff. He's even worked on with Creative Assembly on some of the Total War stuff. As of a couple of years ago, 2023, did Total War Pharaoh. So, you know, maybe he's coming for Alien Isolation 2.
But I think it's one of those older soundtracks in the franchises like Alien Trilogy where Slap that thing on a red splatter vinyl, and people will buy it.
We saw it from I am 8-bit, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get something like that here soon.
I don't know if it has quite the same charm as well, no, not the charm. Maybe I don't feel like
Audience
it's quite as
presence?
popular. Yeah, audience presence, audience resonance as things like Alien Trilogy, though, as things like Isolation. That's not to put the game down. You know, we've all the score down. We've all said how much we enjoyed it and stuff. Oh, and Sarah's just said in the comments, okay, he invented the Nokia tune ringtone. Ian Livingston, according to our Google master, that is Sarah.
Whoa.
So, you know, some pedigree for Ian there.
So, how did you guys feel about the final battle where we're on top of these massive statues? You know, we get out of the lab, Lucretia interrupts because the predator's on her tail, interrupts her father's augmentation process. And I'm still curious, like, well, what would have he become if she hadn't? Um, but he's become this human, you know, we've had human alien hybrids. He's become this human predator hybrid monster. And there's this big final battle with him first in this part of the lab, and then it moves to the outside where there are these massive statues of Hunter and his father Bruno kind of overseeing this holographic earth, and it makes for just a really striking visual at the final battle of the game. But I thought it was really cool, and there's some bosses, the samurai, Lucretia's bodyguards that you didn't kill earlier, which can join you in the fight, and so that part was kind of interesting. And of course, just the ending to the game where you have the striking visual of after the predator kills Hunter and then smears this symbol of his green blood over the face of Bruno Borgia. It was just in the credits roll as it just pulls back and shows the city with this massive statue. I thought was just really cool.
Hunter, do you want to take that one first?
Sure, absolutely. So I think that's very fitting. I think that, you know, like Kevin Harrison, one of the designers, explained that the end fight scene was a bit rushed because of the crunch time the developers were experiencing, and but the team was very proud with the end result, and I think they should be because it's a nice cinematic end piece to the game. I mean, the game starts off with such a striking cinematic level, and it ends with such a striking end piece. Um, and I think, you know, again, the team should be very proud because the game almost, you know, as a player, you have to go and encounter three areas of that final fight, right? You have that centerpiece, which you can fight in the middle as long as you want, but he's going to run. Then you have the statue where you're forced to go fight him. And I remember when I first played, I was like, I'm not going on that. I'm going to try and strike from a distance. And the game kind of forces you, like, no, you got to go up there and you got to fight him with everything you got if you have anything left, especially if you're you're down on your luck with the health. But I really enjoyed it, and I think that the clan symbol on the head was the nice cherry on top as we pull away with the credits. And with everything else we've seen in the franchise, I'm not I'm not pulled away by the fact that we have a human hybrid predator. It didn't bother me too much. If anything, it made me feel like, oh, I felt invincible, and you know, you can feel the physicality of Scarface all this time, and then you fight Hunter, and you're like, oh, but the one thing that annoyed me, and I'll say this, it drove me absolutely crazy, was he uses the smart disc way, way too much, to the point where it was infuriating anytime you went to go grab a health upgrade, or even that, I think it's the mall upgrade, the level right before, he's constantly throwing that thing, so drove me absolutely nuts. But it's nice to be evenly matched with a boss. So he was probably the most interesting boss fight out of the entire game for me.
I'd agree. The overuse of the smart disk was a bit hilarious because every time it's thrown, it lingers there. You have to keep on jumping and avoiding and jumping and avoiding, and it prolonged the fight a lot more than it would need to be without it otherwise. But at the same time, I do agree that that final level, that's pure cinematic flair with everything from the final cutscene to the final battle ground first in that big arena of the station, and then you start climbing, and then you go. Uh, that type of level design, that's what kind of enamored me uh, most of all, with not only the final boss fight, but generally the whole game. Just seeing so many varied environments, so many varied styles of different enemy types, enemy factions, different ways to approach things. So having it, these final few levels be set in these even more detailed and epically constructed impossible architecture sets, it just felt grand. It felt like a grand epic cinematic end to Scarface's revenge story. Regarding the topic of hybrid human predator, uh, I haven't really thought a lot about that aspect until playing the game again and looking at more analytically for the review. And I was kind of asking myself, why haven't I noticed it as much as previous, either previous hybrids like in Alien Resurrection and or in newer media and games when it's presented? That I generally am not much of a fan, especially hybridizing humans with aliens. But what I've came to realize is, most of all, I am not a fan when a hybrid is presented and it aesthetically doesn't look too interesting, number one. Number two, even more importantly, if the hybrid is uh, if it's easily, if you easily get that kind of hybrid, if there's no a kind of process or something, that complicated steps that need to be done to achieve that. And thirdly, most of all, when a hybrid is used as, ooh, look, a big new toy, the next step, who is even better than the original, that's what I generally kind of don't like. And again, especially if there's no reason, why would the new thing be better if it's not really shown and doesn't have a good enough design? So why I didn't have a problem in that aspect with uh, Concrete Jungle is, well, first, uh, that upgrade that Borgia receives at the end, there is kind of a build up to it. The only reason he lived so long is because he ingested the predator blood, which we know from previous material that that is an aspect to it. It's kind of a little bit silly, but okay, it's established there. And then so we find out, oh, they've been luring more and more predators to get more and more of the predator blood, and they've been doing this research for years, trying to find a way to do it. And he has, when we meet the son Borgia, to before he goes all full transformation, he's already being transformed a little bit. We see claw textures and the kind of little reptilian skin. So he's undergoing a whole process. And even at the end, when it's interrupted, even then it's implied it's long, it's expensive, and even then it's not still perfect. And at the end, not only that hybrid, but with the captured and brainwashed predators, they're kind of called the hybrids as well. I don't know with what they're really hybridized, except maybe technology. But even if they have some other genetic aspects baked into them differently, the thing that I liked is they are all shown to be inferior to the original uh, predator here that we have, that we've been following, and that has been proving himself again and again and again. So with these new obstacles, uh, it is the perfect example of what I like when you have either the rich evil company people or the foolish scientists who try to weaponize and try to hybridize that, but in their own hubris, they don't do a good enough job and get wrecked by the creatures, be it an alien or predator. So that's why it kind of all really worked for me there, and I had no problem with it at all. And plus, and even though all of the designs, they were pretty good, pretty interesting looking. They weren't too over the top. The predator augments, they seemed all aesthetically interesting and nothing too over the top. And uh, the most questionable is for Borgia Predator himself at the end. But even there, it's not too much in the sense of not for me not to be able to take seriously. He basically gets super buffed, a bit scaly, a bit weird with the eyes, and the
Gets
technology
some
he's
dreadlocks
so
as well, doesn't he?
yes,
Which is
he
always, I always find the
it
predators and dreadlocks is like a weird relationship in terms of design stuff for me, because of the
yes.
whole thing about the pred aliens and all that kind of stuff as well.
Though I didn't get through the textures and all. Were those implied to be completely predator style dreadlocks or just his super long hair? Because yeah, if it's implied that those are the fleshy predator dreadlocks that kind of grew out, that then I would say that that is the only kind of silly element there. But the other thing, just him being super buffed, and then when you analyze them, if you do with the scan on your mask, it goes into detail. They give their own kind of little explanation there, and it's again in the context of that whole game, it's relatively plausible. It doesn't bring me out of the whole situation. So in that sense, I really liked that aspect. I thought it was done to a tasteful degree, and the whole resolution with it is done exactly up my style, like I like those kinds of stories to be dealt with. So uh, I I'm really happy with the final execution, and then the whole personal angle of how it's treated at the end with the final cinematic, and him quoting back at Borgia not once but twice. The sentence that he probably hasn't heard from his own mother, like even she didn't think you're nothing. I'm only the predator that the reason that you've come this far. So it's really pouring salt in the wound, and it really helps characterize the ending of the story and the predator getting its revenge there. So the tying of the bow at the end, it's perfect in that sense. And one of the more fun boss fights, if you ask me. So I was pretty surprised as well, learning in that video that it was kind of rushed, maybe compared to the others. But I think it's done even better than some of the other boss fights.
Yeah, I think they were saying in that fella's YouTube video, I can never remember his name, Matt something, was it? They were saying that mission was put together in 24 hours, basically, which is fucking impressive, because it's like you guys are saying, it's this very cinematic bookend to the game. This grand visuals of this huge statue on top of a giant size skyscraper in the middle of this city of literal light. Which is it? It's interesting that the game's bookended by very cinematic experiences because, like we were saying, it's a very comic-y feel to the majority of the game, and the whole hybrid thing is very comic-y. I think if we were to ever have that in a film, we all fucking went up in arms when we were learning about the leaks to the Predator and all the, the spinal juice and all that kind of hybrid crap in that. I don't think we'd
But
quite
it's different
accept.
there.
Say again, sorry.
Sorry for interrupting, but it's different there in the sense that uh, the predator thing is because the predators want human DNA of their inferior
Yeah.
prey.
Of course,
So
of course,
I
but
think it would be a bit different with humans trying with a predator. But yeah, it still wouldn't be an easy sell there.
no. But because of the tone of the game, I think it works very well as well. The whole thing about his long life, the predator blood thing, it's like you said, Greg, that has basis in the expanded media going back to the mid-90s, with AVP Eternal. And to that extent, it didn't phase me in the slightest. Like you said as well, it works up into it. When we see Hunter early on, he's just a normal looking bloke. Then we see him, he's slightly started to change a little bit. The cutscenes walk us into this idea of him modifying himself and doing shenanigans and stuff like that. So when he's dropped out of the tank, I'm not like, ugh. I'm like, ooh. Because there's a lot of thematic elements at play in it as well. This idea of becoming the thing that you're hunting. The whole focus of Borgia as well is the attainment of predator technology, and that being the way they gain fame and success and money and all that kind of stuff. So for him to go down that route of physically trying to modify himself to become like a predator as well, it fit into it. especially when Scarface turns around on him after you've defeated him, and he throws those quotes in his face. You are nothing without me. You are a weakling. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't exist. And even then, I still beat you right up here on top of your monument to your success. I'm on top of your hubris right now, putting you down. And that is Scarface being a fantastic Predator character. That's them working some nice thematic and depth into their story, into their character journeys of Scarface as the lead and as Hunter as the bad guy for the game. Environmentally, it's like you said, the game does throw us a lot of different and interesting environmentals, and a big ass statue on top of a big ass building is just fantastic. But that said, I didn't enjoy many of the boss fights in the game, and I don't think from a gameplay point of view I really enjoyed the boss fight either. The very end boss fight, I don't know if it's just me being a bad gamer, but I felt like every single boss fight, other than one or two, the solution was you just get behind them, you hit them in the back, they can't do anything. With Hunter, I felt like that was the same. You guys were talking about the disc. The disc is a pain in the arse in the first one when you're trying to be distant from him, when you're trying to do the bonus missions, when you're trying to get the upgrades and stuff like that. But up there on top of that building, if you're behind him, hitting him, knocking him down, he's not throwing his disc at you. And that was the solution to pretty much most of the boss fights in the game. The one I found most interesting was when we fought Bruno in the flashback. Same solution, but he was a little more interesting due to the shield that he was using. So you had to try and bait him out before you could get behind him and do anything. So I kind of wish they'd have, gone a little bit more, maybe involved the environment a bit more in some of the boss fights. Sometimes that in itself can be frustrating if you like getting pummeled by a boss and you've got to be like, right, what's the environmental puzzle to this, please? I understand that can be a frustration in and of itself as well, but was it just me being a bad gamer, or did I just cotton on to the easy way to do the game, do the boss fights?
I think you're right with the Bruno fight, because that seems to be the only fight where you're really encountering some of his goons the entire time you're fighting him. Where you have levels to the clock tower or the church tower or wherever, I believe it's the church tower, right?
Yeah.
Where you're fighting. So you have levels to gain up there, but then also his goons are consistently marauding you. So it's creating more of a challenge. And then, of course, like you said, the shield. The shield's one of those aspects about his boss fight compared to every other boss fight where you have to think about how to get around that instead of just hopping right over him and slashing in the back.
Yeah, I agree there that mechanically, gameplay wise, most of the boss fights were irritating, to say the least. Some of them were nicely thematically set up, and if you do the mask analysis on them, yeah, some fluff there that kind of explains some things, though always they ridiculously can tank the amount of damage there. But some of the ways they have of their own little attacks, the weapons that can block some, but you have to figure out that there are little puzzle elements. But as Aaron said there, most of it does boil down to jump around, jump around, jump around, get to their back, slap them a few times, and then jump around again and repeat ad infinitum. So yeah, there I don't think it was done. It was done as creatively as it could have been, but I do agree that Bruno was one of the best fights there. I did enjoy the last fight with Hunter, and I do find again it's more thematically than gameplay wise that it actually means anything. But the thematic contrast between with the Bruno fight, you have Bruno with his henchmen against you, where you're outnumbered. But in the last fight against Hunter, you are the one that has Lucretia's samurai with you against him. So that's kind of a nice kind of opposition there, where how things started and how things ended. But mechanically, the boss fights were one of the weakest aspects. It's fun fighting the myriad types of enemies, fun against different types of gang members, the different kind of smaller, medium classes, the heavy, not power loader police thingies that go around. You have a lot of different, and the different kinds of sentry guns and snipers in buildings, and people throwing RPGs. There are a lot of things that you have to think about and worry during the levels. But when you take on the boss fights, it does become somewhat of a grind.
Yeah, I would agree that some of them are more frustrating than others. I did have fun with a few, like the Luchador Arena. I thought was pretty fun. Those smaller boss fights where you're against like a few different mini bosses, like at the metal concert, and it's like the junkie freaks and all that. And thematically, the Stoneheart battle and the Bruno and Hunter battles, I thought were really well done. But the samurai were frustrating because they were part of that mission, which was already like the hardest level of the game, which is what you said, Aaron, which was the 10,000 ways to die. That mission was just such a gauntlet. Um, and those little missiles, man. But like in the Monster Squad boss fight, and in that one level, the 10,000 ways to die, those little missiles, they would find you no matter how you jumped or what you hid behind. I hated those things a lot. But yeah, the boss fights. I mean, I don't like boss fights that are too formulaic either, where there's just like, this is the pattern to beat this boss. So it's nice to have different ways to beat a boss. But yeah, a few of them were just kind of damage sinks and went on for a bit too long. I remember that samurai boss fight, when you fight them individually and then all together at the end of the level, just felt like a bit much. But thematically, I thought they were well done. I think the Stoneheart one was just awesome in terms of like a striking visual. But at the end, like he kept killing me, and then I cheesed his animation with a specific combo where he couldn't move out of it, and that's how I took him out. Is I just cheesed him for like the second half of his health.
Guess how I did it, Adam?
How did you do it?
I got behind him and attacked him from behind.
So did you cheese him as well? Like, could he not break out of that animation, or?
No, it's just the way I did all the boss monsters.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would jump behind him and slash at him and stuff like that too. But there was like a specific combo where he would kind of get stuck if you did that one combo with the glaive, I think. And I mean, the shuriken got him pretty good too, because you would get one hit throwing it out and another when it returns to you. But
I did. So weaponry wise, I actually really liked the shuriken in the disc. You know, the ability to lock onto multiple targets in one throw. That's why I found it quite useful against the aliens, because you lock onto 3 targets, throw it through it, go through and do multiples at once. The spear gun design was actually quite unique for the game. I think the only time we've ever seen an interpretation quite like that, which was cool to see them do their own take on it. I don't know why they didn't do AVP2's version, given the time period it was developed on. But it was cool look. Yeah, I really liked a lot of the interpretations of design for this. You were talking about the costumes earlier. That not only is that a really cool replay incentive. I'm already going through replaying it, trying to catch the ones I've missed. But they looked good. It really felt like Eurocom. It felt like the devs actually enjoyed the IP. It felt like they were interested in the Predator, whether that's the deep cut laws of Grant Morrison scripts. I don't know how much came from him, how much came from Eurocom, but the AVP Eternal bits and pieces, the design bits and pieces. It genuinely felt like, for all the technical wriggles and complaints, that these guys enjoyed what they were doing.
Yeah. And another cool little feature was, in the menu, you could go to the Predator ship and see all those weapons on his wall and get details for those weapons and see their models. Same with the enemies you had killed in the game. There's a trophy room where you can see all the skulls of these characters that you had killed, and it will show you a little bit of their backstory. So I thought that was just a really nice touch. And it's those extra features that can make a game feel just a little bit better.
I did feel the ritual hunts were a bit on the pointless side.
Are they all just run from point to point? Because I haven't done all of them yet.
I've done 4 of them, 4 of 8, I think it is, and they all seem to have been the follow the check marks kind of thing. And it's like I was saying before we started recording, it just felt like a way for the devs to go, here, get used to the way this camera works, get used to the way this environmental navigation works. Maybe that'll help you in the game. Because even like the training, the tutorials were separate to the storyline. The game itself, if you jump into the story, doesn't walk you through really how to play the game.
No.
So, go do the tutorials before you start the game. When you unlock the challenges, go play them just to get a bit of environmental navigation practice in. But outside of that, I didn't really think the rituals were meaningful.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed on the ritual challenges, though, is during the loading screens for those, you see some of the hand-drawn concept art for the game, which I found we have some on our website.
Very low res, very low,
Yeah.
small size.
So we'll have to see if we can get lucky with finding some better quality of those. But they had some interesting costume designs in that concept art that wasn't in the final game, like a full Xenomorph Predator armor, which was kind of cool, and just some other looks of the Predators, which we didn't ultimately see in terms of the costume selections, but were also quite interesting.
My favorite weapon during the whole game, uh, generally in these Predator type games, I'm mostly a fan of using the spear when you can use it IMO correctly in the sense how I imagine you would use the spear. I just loved all of the combos you can have with the spear and the glaive, the same type there, because at the time you either had in the first AVP, if I remember correctly, no spear. No, you did have a spear, yes. But in the second AVP, especially, I remember you have those just basic attacks, and it's very clumsy. In AVP 2010, years later, you just had the throwing thing. It wasn't until Predator Hunting Grounds that you've had actual flipping of the spear and doing combos with it, like we have seen in Predator Concrete Jungle. So. Even though it wasn't maybe always the strongest and most practical weapon there, I just love doing the ballerina type flipping around and the elegant gymnastics of it all with those glaives and spears and just uh, spinning around like the most edgy ninja there. It's always nice to see that. So it was really nice to be able to play with that. Because yeah, again, that's something that you really can do with a Predator in third person. Even in first person, it's really hard to imagine how you would do that to make it completely feel fluidly. So I get why it was constrained within AVP2, and they didn't know what to do with it in AVP 2010. But what do you have? Third person Predator games. I'm glad that in both of the instances we have good, nice feeling combos with the spear. So I'm I'm hoping that that's always a staple.
What do you guys feel about, or how do you guys feel about the scope of the game stepping down from a GTA-esque open world kind of thing to this a lot of missions, but mission based campaign? Do you think it works? Would it worked better as a GTA?
I think it works ultimately. They make the missions feel distinct enough, but you're certainly in some missions revisiting places you had been to before, more so the city in the first half of the game, less so, I would say, in the second half of the game. So you can definitely tell there was a shift during development. I don't feel like the game suffers for it, but you can kind of see the bones of what they were going for still, I think, especially in that first half of the game. Again, less so in the second half. I would like to see a Predator game like that, but in my opinion, this game, for whatever reason, they had to pivot from that, and I think they pulled it off. But it is interesting that you can still see those elements.
Greg Hunter?
So my take on it is, uh, I think coming from an industry where things are just cut so much, and you kind of have to divorce these little love letters to the process and these thematic and cinematic elements that you enjoy. um, I could I can appreciate where the dev team was going, and it is sad that we didn't get an open world Predator game because the opportunities and the scope, which is would have been so incredible, and I think just we would be having a completely different conversation about the game if it had gone that direction. But I appreciate that the game was able to then take some of those environments and still make them dynamic in other ways. And I fell in love with the idea that you could track just a regular NPC at one point in their process and see their lives and determine for yourself, is that an honorable kill or not based off their actions. That was a really cool aspect that I'm sad didn't make it into the game. But um, when you're on a crunch and you have to make those decisions, I totally understand where they had to go with the direction.
Speaking of honorable kills, I love the bit where the bonus mission is to kill all the prostitutes to take out that network. It's like it won't be enough to kill the pimps. You have to kill all the sex workers too.
Yeah, yeah, that was a bit strange in the sense of, again, most of the game thematically is very focused, and you understand that Scarface being exiled for 100 years, he's probably kind of pissed and wants to take out anybody that is connected and uses what he probably sees as stolen tech, his stolen honor. So anybody even remotely affiliated with that, he is gonna take out. I understand somewhat. Again, this Predator is not a good guy, he is not a hero. He's out there to have fun. But then at the same time, some of those kind of bonus missions and even the main parts, those kills, they do not make the most sense. As you say, they are not the biggest threat, and neither are. I mean, during the previous missions, you get a warning: don't kill innocent civilians, or you won't be able to complete a mission. But at the same time, what? So we can kill these other people that have not been really shown to be dangerous or a threat to other people's lives, but since they are a bit frowned upon in human society, yeah, the predator sees that, he's going to take it out. I love that if you scan those people, when you do enough of those flick throughs, you get like, oh, but they have a concealed gun. Oh, okay. That's probably, I can imagine Scarface doing. I'm feeling a bit itchy. I haven't gotten any new kills. Let me scan and see. Oh, this one has a gun. Okay, I'm jumping
If
on
it's
that
good
one.
enough for City Hunter in the subway,
True,
it's
true,
good
true,
enough for
true.
Scarface. Although,
Yep.
yeah, that attitude in that mission is certainly aged very fucking poorly. One of the many sort of stereotypes and character design of the early parts of the game that would not hold up scrutiny.
You're
Yeah.
saying that nicely. You're saying that very nicely.
I'm trying to word this in a diplomatic fashion.
I think in the lab mission though, you can kill all the unarmed scientists without any penalty.
I get that comment though, in the sense, again, that's a bit strange there. They don't have weapons, but again, Scarface, he's kind of a DICK. So
Well, I don't think of it in that way. I think of it as more as a everybody here is involved
yeah,
with the disrespect of the Predator's brothers and sisters, um, of Scarface himself.
exactly.
It all contributes towards, might not be literal. He's got a weapon. He's a badass fighter. Or the kind of thing, as it is a bit more that theme, a bit more of that depth, as to maybe. While I like my sadistic predators, it's nice to see it not being so black and white as gun, good target, no gun, bad target.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's more that kind of stereotypical honor code for the predators. It wasn't emphasized too much in this game, and I frequently got more of a feeling of that revenge story there. Yes, even though it's kind of from one angle a bit silly that he can just take out all the scientists. Again, I can imagine Scarface probably going, "Y'all in this facility, you touch my boys, and now you're all gonna pay for it." So uh, I completely understand that, especially after he was captured there. He's mad even more. He needs to get even. So I do get that, but I kind of forgot what, Aaron. What was your original question?
Did you miss it being an open world kind of game?
Oh,
Did you think it pivoted well from that early development point to the finished game?
yes, yes. To answer that part, um, true. The studio was a bit ambitious, too ambitious for what they could have done with allocated resources and available time. Uh, but again, even with those limitations, I'm kind of imagining seeing this game released today with maybe some of the aspects that would be logically modernized, probably some of the problematic story beats, but also like the controls and everything. If we just take the basic story beats, the type of level design, the amount of levels, again, today that is something you would rarely see. So, uh, as somebody who has only now gotten the chance to play this game, it feels like a complete product. First of all, it's so damn strange that I can actually unlock beautiful looking skins that are not
Without paying
behind.
for it?
Yeah, that they're not behind a paywall of a DLC or a loot box. So there are a limited number of collectibles that make sense. The side missions give you little bits of fluff, lore elements, no real grinding there to unlock this beige loincloth or something like that. Um, Yet at the same time, you got a complete story. It takes some time to finish. Some of that is because of the difficulty and the prolonged boss fights, true. But you have a very large number of levels. They are quite varied, even though this is taken most of it in the same city. Technically, all of it is in the same city, just a few levels in a different time period. But you have varying aesthetics, varying enemy types, different complete styles, and it feels like a lot happens within one game. So, in that sense, getting such a game today with a few of those aspects that either toned down, more serious, or modernized and mechanically tweaked, that would work very well and would probably be praised. What I reason probably has been kind of problematic at the time, the early 2000s, they were historic for the era of gaming. You had hitter after big hitter after big hitter. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Predator Concrete Jungle came out in the year that Halo 2 did, or something like that. So it's no wonder that compared to the other big games at the time, people there had different kind of criteria, and they were in the sense, if this isn't a complete uh, batting it out of the park, if it isn't a complete 10 out of 10, if it's mediocre-ish, then it's disappointing in that sense. It gets shrugged aside because there are better games at the time that are getting all the focus. But in today's kind of aspect where gaming is a lot more with a lot more details available, yet we have other kind of mechanical problems with how much player retention it's receiving, and a lot of cut other shorter content, and it's a lot behind paywalls, a lot of stories that don't feel completed. um, you can see that Predator Concrete Jungle is a game of its time, not just because of the outdated elements, but the general variety is something that I don't think I would be able to see today in a Alien or Predator game. Maybe in a larger budget type of game, but even there, or a lucky indie studio that has a good budget, which is here and there kind of hard to find. But you can see that uh, so I get that it had a bigger scope, and it would be lovely if we would get that full GTA kind of scope, and you feel the elements of the kind of characterization and the style is very GTA meets Predator meets comic book exaggeration. But that would be fantastic. I don't think we will ever be, unfortunately, able to see that unless these future Predator installments hit it out of the park, which fingers crossed. But generally, I am very surprised now looking back that we even got that, and with all of its problems, that it has that level of interesting stuff in a game. So uh, I'm just happy for what we got at all, basically, as of
Yeah.
now.
I think we can still have some older feeling games today when we're lucky. I think Dark Descent is a good example of that, where it's a complete package. But if we were to see a remaster for Concrete Jungle, which again I would love to see, um, I feel like Night Dive and Aspire have been really model developers in terms of how to handle a remaster. In that, with something like the Tomb Raider remaster, right? They have classic controls for people who have played this game a ton and are used to that, but they also have modernized controls and UI elements. The Thing remaster was another great example of that. Just Night Dive knocked it out of the park with that. As far as the problematic elements, and personally, I'm not really a fan of that word. Like I get things are not made now than as they were then, but I never think personally that censoring things is the answer, because you're you're gonna piss off some people with that for one, but like it's it's just a product of the time. Yeah, like throw in a disclaimer if you want, like, hey, the attitudes have shifted, you know. But I never think that that's just not how I like to see things done personally.
Well, Adam, I think that in today's market, remasters have become such a popular piece of media, right? Fans beg for GTA remakes, as we've received numerous times over the years, and other pieces of gaming like Tomb Raider. And I think if we look back at that time, a lot of those remasters, if anything, kind of acknowledge those problematic elements. And I think there's definitely a market for a Predator Concrete Jungle remaster to be done in the future, and to even get other elements of it done right. Um, but I think a Night Dive would be great for this game, and I think remasters have shown that they sometimes outsell even modern IPs. I mean, look at, this is kind of a stretch here, but look at Silent Hill 2. You know, a game that was remastered, and I don't expect Concrete Jungle would ever get an extensive graphic or redo like that. But the idea that certain games hold that nostalgia and bring back that feeling of when we enjoyed them as a kid or a teenager, it definitely still sells today.
Yeah, and Silent Hill 2, I would say that was more of a full from the ground up remake with like completely different systems and stuff like that. So, but sometimes you have games that really blur the line between like remaster or remake. I would say like um, Shadow of the Colossus is a good example of that one. But for this one, maybe like I don't know, like what they did with the Thing remastered, right? Like you can, or Tomb Raider, like you can have old graphics or modern graphics, bump those up a little bit, tweak the controls. I really think there could be a market for this, especially as you were saying, Greg, if the new Predator movies knock it out of the park.
Well, like I always do, I did posts on all our various social channels going, what did you think we're going to be discussing this game? What did you think of it? And so many fucking comments are going, I'd love a remaster. I'd love a remake. I'd love to see Night Dive. Everybody always calls out Night Dive, take on the game. So there is 100% an appetite for it. And, when I do talk about the dated attitudes and stuff, I'm not there going, we must remove this from any, remake or any thing of it. I don't believe in that. Preservation of mentality at the time is important to learn from that time and things like that as well. But I would be completely up for a modern remake of a remaster of the game, even if it was just a minor tweak of the camera controls and some of the movement. Like I said, either before we started or earlier in the game, I think it was probably when we were recording, even just playing it on the emulators on PC2, PC2S.
PCSW2.
Yeah, even playing it on that with like the upscaling bits turned on, it looks good. That on a commercial, that level of quality, graphical quality on a commercial release, I would be fucking happy with. I'd be very happy just with that. And again, as part of something we've talked about many times in the past, Adam, game preservation, accessibility of all games, it's important from that point of view. So just to have it remade, just so people who maybe missed out on it, maybe people who are not so savvy with running emulators, maybe people who don't go and collect old consoles, it'd be good for newer fans to be able to experience these things, especially with, like Greg's pointed out, the success of Prey. Think of all the new fans that probably came in with Prey. And will hopefully come in with Badlands and stuff like that, the ability for them to be able to experience this thing that might not have been critically successful, but is successful generally within the fandom. And talking about an open world thing, as well, to answer my own question, you can feel it, you can feel the origins in the game, but I don't think it detracts from it. I think they worked around it all very well. But I would still like to be able to get that experience going forward. I would like a hub world. I would like an open world. I would like the ability to go, you know what, I'm going to hunt this gang down, rather than follow, the linear narrative of how it's presented in this. I'd like the ability to track my targets like was originally envisioned and pick who I'm going for, and these side quests or rituals, perhaps more interesting rituals, to be included there as optional side things. Predator is begging for an open world game, and it's a shame that they didn't get to do it in this due to the technical difficulties that they faced at the time, whether that's because Eurocom wasn't who makes GTA, I can't remember.
Rockstar.
Right, maybe because they're a smaller company, they weren't Rockstar, they didn't have those resources or that. At that point, what would GTA have been? 2 games in, 3 and Vice City in terms of open world at this point, I think.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think San Andreas was out at that point. There's also a number of other open world games now, like that I've heard are really good, like the Yakuza series or Sleeping Dogs, I think was one that people have really praised.
Well, even things like Ghost Recon as well, that's open environment-ish. So that kind of vibe, it is more, common. Perhaps it's not such a technical difficulty nowadays. Maybe it's a resource difficulty because there's so much you could fucking do. But it's begging for it. I will always go on about this, and I hope to see it one day. Do you folk have anything else you'd like to say, or shall I read some of the comments from the socials just so we can get a vibe? Okay, I'm getting nods and head shakes, I guess. So from Facebook, we have Emily Newton. This is my favorite Predator game ever. I fell in love with it since I was a teen and haven't stopped playing it. I would one day love to have somebody do a remastered edition of the game. I'm only going to read the top sort of comments. There's 60-something comments on here and 20-something comments on YouTube.
Wow, I got a few comments there.
Yes. Well, every time we do one of these older games, it's people bringing it up. I mean, it's not always positive. RC Designs here says, I wasn't a fan. Yes, I loved it because it was an actual Predator game, but the controls were so clunky. I found myself getting more frustrated more than anything while playing it. I don't think I ever beat it to this day. Which again, it, goes to what I was saying earlier. No, I didn't finish it until this day. Jonathan Besanko. Love this game. One of my favorite games to be released on the PS2. I still remember picking this up the day it was released. My dad took me to our local game store, EB Games. Is that still a thing, Adam? EB Games? Is that Electronic Boutique? Because we had that over here.
Yeah, it was pretty much taken over by GameStop.
Okay. We had an Electronic Boutique. That's where I got my first ever Game Boy from. So I picked it up from EB Games, and I was so excited to grab a copy. Finished the whole game in only a few days. Crazy to think it's been 20 years already. Ian Foringer, man, I need to get back into this game. It is pure and peak Predator experience. Alex Messam, it had a lot of good ideas, but it needed more time in the oven. Brennan, I'm not even going to attempt that. I'm so sorry. Brennan says, I missed this game. It was the first M-rated game I ever played and was the whole reason I asked for a PS2 when I was a kid. I really wish they would do a remaster on modern consoles, refining the combat along the way. And I'll just read one more from Facebook and then I'll flick over onto YouTube for a couple. Dave Fisher, it's the only game that made you feel you were a predator. Yeah, the controls are a bit clunky and it got a little repetitive with the smallest levels, but it was so much fun to play. A remaster or even a better sequel with an open world the size of GTA 5 map would be amazing and would be what Isolation was to the Alien series to the Predator series. So just flicking onto YouTube for a few there. Christian Perez says, I love and miss everything about this game. From Scarface, his weapons, his brutal kills and execution finishes, the skins, the bosses, the story, and the music. Really wish we got a remake, remaster, or sequel to this one true Predator single-player game. A couple of comments there about remastering the game and wanting it. Alenium Falcon says, Miles better than Assassin's Creed, has a really good central character in Scarface, and I love the music for the trophy room as it captures the tone of Predator really well. Yeah, so that is pretty much the vibe of the game. I mean, if you go on IMDb, which again is his audience score, that is a 7.3 out of 10. If you look on Metacritic, just looking on the Predator on the Xbox version here, because I'm biased and I was always an Xbox boy, the audience score is a 7.1 as opposed to the critical score of a 46. Let's just have a quick look at PlayStation. Can I do that?
Like Predator 2, it's underrated. Yeah, I originally got it for Xbox, and I got it from Game Crazy, if anyone remembers that one.
No, I've not heard of that one.
It was not in your neck of the woods.
So again, a 47 critically on the PlayStation and 7.1. No, not 7.2 on user scores. So yeah, the critics hated it. You know, I read some of the big name reviews on it earlier from like the official Xbox magazine and the official PlayStation magazines. And they fucking slaughtered it. You know, 2.5 out of 10, 2.4 out of 10, stuff like that. Critics slaughtered the game. But fandom loves it. And, you know, ultimately, I think that's more what's important. And, you know, for all its quirks and its little troubles, I think it's fair to say we here all enjoyed the game. And, you know, now I've finished it, I'm quite keen to actually jump back into it, especially now that I've got a feel for the quirks of the camera and the controls. You should have seen me, Adam, earlier. You know, I was fluidly moving through that city, jumping from building to building, catching onto the things, flipping over the railings, moving on. Yeah. I'm glad I've finally finished this, and I'm glad I've got over my alien thing. It still pisses me off, but at least I finished the game and got through it. But yeah,
I'm very proud of you and you two who played through it for the first time. And again, hopefully more will have the opportunity to do so in the future. Real quick, Aaron, I wanted to show off something. Some of you know we've worked with artist who goes by Azulg Arts on a number of pieces, both celebrating anniversaries and celebrating like new movies and stuff like that. And she has become one of my favorite Predator artists. And so I reached out to her for another commission to celebrate the anniversary of this game. And you'll probably see it up on our social media channels at the time of this recording. But if you wanted to show it off in here real quick, Aaron, for our viewers and for our listeners, check out our social media or our website and you will be able to see it. So we had a number of ideas, and this is the one we ended up going with. That we were going to go with something else, but she was kind of leaning towards this one. I was like, you're the artist. If this is what you're feeling, like, let's go for this one. And it's just kind of paying homage to that end bit of the game. You can still see little outlines there. That's not going to be in the final piece, but yeah, what do you guys think?
I have no
Well,
idea
describe it first before we talk about it, Adam. Come on.
Okay, so this shows the end part of the game where we have the statue of Bruno Borgia with the green blooded symbol of the defeated Hunter Borgia painted on his face. We have our Scarface predator holding up the skull of Hunter Borgia as its blood is dripping onto the statue. And he looks up towards the sky as his ship is coming to retrieve him after his journey to redeem himself is complete. And behind him, we have 20 years of Predator Concrete Jungle.
Now discuss.
I have no idea what you were originally intending for the image to be, but this is fantastic. This just the first second you're shown it's impactful right away with the composition of the layout. I think it looks phenomenal. The idea is executed perfectly. I think. We can have close-ups of a million and one predators, and they look fantastic as always. I mean, if you want, you could just do a close-up screenshot of predator hunting grounds models. They look fantastic. But to capture the feeling of this game, I think this is awesome because it captures the scale. No other predator game lets you roam around as much as Concrete Jungle did, and I think this captures the whole epic storyline plus the scale of the concept in a pretty good way.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Greg. That's well said. I think just the small little pockets of detail and in Neonopolis behind Scarface is incredible, and I think that this image right here encapsulates I think all of our feelings when we finally finish the game and we feel reclaimed of that honor. And just the little lighting details too. I mean, the color scheme, the lighting, it just feels so complimentary to this game's 20 years of legacy for people that have loved it. So this is just incredible.
What do you think, Aaron? Did we make the right choice with this one?
Did we pick this one? Did I pick this one?
I'll show you the one we were going to go with, and the artist mentioned to me that they might have gone with this other one, but if this is the one we want, she'll do it. And I was like, if you would have gone with this one, let's go with this one because that was my second choice. So if this is the one you're feeling, let's do it. But we'll show you the thumbnail sketches here in a moment. But how do you feel about the finished
I
piece?
think it's fantastic. Now that I've finished the game and I can appreciate the scope and the theme and the feel of this end mission and this imagery specifically, this one shot just sums up the emotional. I'd say emotional in terms of the Predator, but the thematic, the core of the Scarface's journey in the game, and I think it's fantastic. It's why she is the artist and we are just the Muppets that go, we've got a little bit of an idea, can you do something with it? And on a technical level, Azog's just fucking phenomenal. Every piece she has done for us has been stunningly rendered.
This is actually in much higher resolution than I'm showing here. Like Scarface is in full detail. Like we'll be sharing detailed shots of him, but even up close, he's very detailed. The only real piece of compositional liberty, I would say, which I almost mentioned but didn't, is that statue's a hell of a lot bigger in the game. But unless you wanted Scarface looking like teeny tiny on there,
with no detail in it,
yeah.
And you always want to see that detail anyway. I mean, Greg said, we can have all the cool fucking looking Predators we want, but we still want a cool fucking looking Predator in there with the depth and the theme going off there. So, it was a good choice on her part. Do you want me to throw up these other...
Yeah, why don't we take a look at the thumbnail sketches real quick? So these were the initial ideas that she presented, and we were going to go with 3, which was a showdown, the first showdown between Scarface and Stoneheart on the rainy catwalk in Neonopolis. And so that was the one we had decided, but she was feeling 2, and 2 was honestly my second choice. But I also really liked 7, which had the Xenomorphs, but I just love the image of the Xenomorphs coming in towards Scarface with Mother in the tank there, looking all spooky like that. But I was like, Aaron's going to be pissed if I do a Xenomorph piece for this one. And then another one that I had really liked was number 1, just the close-up detail of Mother looking at Scarface. So that was also a secondary choice for me. But what do you guys think of these?
These are great. I remember voting for 6 and 9 because that at the time I had not finished the game, so I didn't see the impact of number 2 yet. And I just remember thinking that 6 and 9 were at that point in my journey felt authentic. But now, after finishing the game,
Hunter,
2.
describe them. Describe them
Oh, okay.
briefly.
Well, so number 6 is Scarface with the revolver that I'm gonna space on her name for a second. One moment. It's
Isabella, I think.
is Isabella's revolver that she permanently, spoilers, scars Scarface with. And number 9 is the final battle between Scarface and Stoneheart in the church.
Okay. Sorry. Now, before I interrupted you, what were you going to say?
I have lost my train of thought.
I do apologize. I have to remind you people that this is an audio thing as well as a video thing.
No,
So right.
but I think where I was going with it was at the time I had just passed the Borgio fight where you find out how Scarface gains his scar. So at the time, that was one of the most impactful moments of the game for me. But now, after finishing it, I think 2 was the appropriate choice. I think it says so much about the journey, our journey, and Scarface's journey throughout the game.
This is the first time I'm seeing all of these, and it's kind of hard for me to focus on which one. But yeah, I do think that even all of these are stunning, stunning. Sorry for the audio viewers. No amount of our shitty descriptions would be enough to surmount seeing this in person. But the final one on top of the final statue, I do agree, is the best there. Though just looking at these, I mean, the first thought that comes to my mind is she could do an art book with these things. The fans would go wild.
I wish we could afford to pay her to just do all of these, but that's not realism.
Well,
One at a time. In
I
80
really
years.
noticed her work starting with Predator Hunting Grounds. She had started to do a number of commissions and personal work for that. But yeah, some of the stuff she's done, especially on the games, like AVP2 art she's done has just been phenomenal. So check her out, Azulgarts.
Spell it.
AZULG. I think there's an underscore and then just arts.
Cool. Echo that thought there because she is fantastic, just a fantastic artist, and one Adam likes to visit to quite a lot, very understandably for these anniversary ones. Shall we wrap up, boys?
Let's do it.
Okay. So as of recording and as of probably release, we have not yet recorded our interview with the developers of the game. We do have one in the pipelines. It should hopefully be recorded by the time this comes out. I'm not sure. It's a very complicated one across 3 different time zones and a lot of busyness. But it's there. It's going to happen. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm very excited for it. Again, it's been a great opportunity to play the game, finally force myself to finish it this time. I say force myself as if it was hard for me to do it, but we live busy lives right now, so the anniversary been making me focus on it and getting it done, and it was so fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm very glad. So thank you. Hunter, do you want to shout out your channels, because we haven't really talked about it. I mentioned it at the start, but you didn't bring it up in your intro. So go ahead, tell people who you are and what you do and when they can find you.
Sure. My name's Hunter, but I go by the Xeno Plays, and you can find me primarily on Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. I primarily stream more on Twitch and TikTok. And yeah, you can follow me there. And we try to stream every Friday and Saturday with something new that I have not played in the AVP universe, or just a nice little throwback and throw on hunting grounds or fire team elite or something fun that we can enjoy. But yeah,
Thank you very much, Adam. You want to whore us out?
Yes,
Hopefully
so
not get us killed by
you
Scarface.
can you can always find us on our main hub of activity, our website, avpgalaxy.net. We are also on all the major social channels: Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, and now Blue Sky. We have a Discord and a Steam group. We'll be hopefully updating those a bit more this year, so be sure to check those out. As usual, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We promise we have a new genetic memory podcast coming. That one will be on Event Horizon, so that should be an interesting one. And actually, Hunter here was our very first patron, so thank you for continuing to support us, Hunter. We really appreciate it.
if you love these guys, it's worth every single penny, and it's not
Thank
much.
you. No, we don't ask for much, but every little helps. You have Hunter, and people like Hunter have helped us send Adam to South by Southwest to go to that crash site for what is easily, not unbiasedly, the best coverage that anybody has put out there about it. We got to send him to Servios a couple of times to get hands on and put out again what is not unbiasedly the best coverage that I've seen of those events. And it helps us pay for the post-production editing for this thing, for the podcast, for the audio version, which makes my life easier. And it makes me less anal about going, no, Adam, we've got this to edit. I'm not recording 1,000 more. So we do actually have a lot of episodes in the bank that we're beasting through. We're recording a lot more. We've got a bunch more in the pipeline with even more to follow, and lots of fucking ideas for discussion topics and stuff like that going forwards. If you are listening to this on a podcast catcher, iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, anything like that, please do leave us reviews. It's boring shit to say, but we have to say it and we have to remind it. But that the reviews and the comments and the ratings help our visibility to other Alien and Predator fans. It helps us get out there. It helps us be seen more. So if you do leave us a review. I mean, if you hate us, still leave us a review. We'll read it out and we'll laugh at it. And if you want to leave us a good one, read it out and we'll kiss your ass as well. So either way, you're going to get read out. We preferred the nice reviews though. So what did somebody call us the other day, Adam? Somebody you met in person.
I'm trying to. When was this?
You said somebody compared us to. Was it Egbert and somebody? I can't remember how to pronounce the names. Our Dynamic.
Oh, Ebert. I think that was you that compared us, Hunter. You said we had an Ebert and Roper, or Ebert and Siskel dynamic, and that it was good when we butted heads, right, Aaron?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wait, no, it was. Sorry, it wasn't you, Hunter. It was. God, I'm blanking on his name. I met up with him at South by Southwest.
So it wasn't written down. That's why that's not getting accurately relayed to everybody.
I'm gonna find it. Cosmic Incubation on our forums. Tyler was his name. So
okay,
yes.
But yeah, we'll read them out if you read reviews and stuff. We'll read the good ones. We'll read the bad ones. But for those that enjoy us, it does genuinely help. And I hate having to do this bullshit spiel at the end. But yeah, just to point it out. And to just bring out some of our recent Patreons. Kyle Barker isn't new, but recently upgraded their support level from Warrior and Hunter to Praetorian and Elder. So thank you very much for that. We have also recently been joined by Xander House, who, if you join us on streams, people will know Xander and love Xander, who's also one of the Perfect Organism guys. And PO themselves actually supported us recently as well, which is very much appreciated. And Christopher Bouquet, hopefully I pronounced that right, and David Fisher. I'm going to try and do a better job of reading out new members. But again, because we record so many and they don't all come out in the recorded order, it's a little bit awkward. But I'm going to try our best to do that going forwards as well. But thank you to all those folk out there who are helping support. If you want to follow me personally, I'm at _Corporal Hicks on Twitter, and I'm on Blue Skies as just Corporal Hicks. Adam? Fucking hell, you're on the ball. What are you doing? You've muted yourself now. You were unmuted there.
Oh my god, I have too many tabs right now. I wanted to give a special shout out to Kyle Baker from our
Yes.
Patreon. I don't know if you saw this, Aaron, but I believe he sent us a donation, which was not just the usual membership, which was pretty sizable donation. So thank you very much for that. But yes, if you'd like to follow me personally, it's at Ridgetop21 on X or Instagram, or just Ridgetop on Blue Sky.
And we don't bother asking Greg because he doesn't have one, but you can find him on Discord and the forums.
Yes, I go by Still Collating, generally on most alien-related groups. I am in a few on the Discords, mostly on our forums as well, and probably slowly but surely making my username there appropriate for some alien Facebook groups as well. But yeah, mostly on the Discord I hang out if you are considering the game nights or just want to chat generally.
Well, thank you everybody for listening or watching. This has been Corporal Hicks.
Ridgetop.
Still collating.
Xeno plays.
And I'm the boss of this city, you ugly son of a bitch.